Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Time!
3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU. America. They got a football team now.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, here's Jim Coyle.
Good Friday is here. I'm ready for the weekend. You're here with us. That's Indiana Sports Beat Radio. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and expecting Jim here in a little bit, but appreciate you for joining us today, wherever you may be, whether you're listening to us in Evansville, Bloomington, or up in the region of Northwest Indiana. We appreciate you being with us here today. It's a little bit of a overcast, maybe a little bit rainy day today, but hey, we need some rain because we haven't had it for a while and get some green back on our grass, but got a good show here for you today. Alec Lasley will be here from the Hoosier.com shortly. We'll get his impression of the first couple days of Indiana's camp opening and try to get a pulse on the team and things of that nature. Then Zach Osterman will join us. Again, getting his viewpoints of where this is at, some of the national news that is occurring right now. And then we'll finish up with Bill Bender from the Sporting News. And I'm sure he'll have a lot to talk about scale, some articles that he's written as well this week. So we got a great, fun-filled, packed show for you today, and we will keep it on track so that we get everybody's in and get their opinions on things, but more importantly, talk a little IU football with the Hoosiers in camp. One big news that hit you late yesterday. Late yesterday, there had been rumors floating around for the last couple of days. Kellan Wyatt is back. Young man that got hurt last year was basically lighting it up. Was it probably the biggest surprise for Indiana last season early on. I had said before the season started, I really liked him to break out last year because of how he played against Indiana when he was at Maryland. And then when he came to Indiana, he did not disappoint. And unfortunately for him, he got hurt. He was one of their leaders in a lot of statistical categories, sacks, things of that nature, and got hurt, got that knee injury, but that opened the door for Daley to step in and get more playing time. And at about that time, he had started to come into his own, get going. But now you've got both of them back. You got Daley, you got Kellan Wyatt on top of already what's there at the outside and the inside. If I had a crystal ball and I could make some predictions here, my first one, I think, is that Daley's going to probably be an inside player, in their scheme, playing a 1 technique or 0 technique at times, or lined up as the 3 technique. Now, the beauty of this defense, Coach Haynes has said in the past, is that they could take anybody, move them inside, move them outside, stand them up, all that stuff. So there is flexibility in the defense to do some of those things. But I look for him to be more of an inside player, and then Wyatt to be more of what he has been, weak side rush in type of player. And look, right now, Indiana has probably 10 defensive linemen that can play. And that's going to be great competition on top of keeping them fresh throughout a ball game, because you can rotate those guys, and it's going to be a very big positive for Indiana when it comes down to it, with the depth they have there. Now, I don't think that Wyatt or Daley, in the minds of Haynes and Sig and all that, is to have them ultimately prepared week 1 against North Texas. I think it's going to be a progressional step to get them up to speed. Understand that they've been off of it for better part of 4 or 5 months. And just to get them back into the swing of things, a lot of these guys don't stop working out. You know, Coach Signetti had said yesterday that Daley was in the mindset of getting himself prepared for the draft in 27, and therefore he was in pretty good shape, and he's a freak of an athlete anyway. But I don't necessarily think they're going to bring them along in a warp speed fashion. I think they know what they can do. They can bring them along at a good pace that is respective of where those two kids are at, coming off some pretty serious injuries, get them back into quote unquote football shape. But at the same time, taking the kids that are already there and really getting to evaluate what they have continuing from spring. You've already got Landino, you've got Tucker that are the two stalwarts inside. And those two is kind of the same thing. So this fall camp, as far as the D line is concerned, there's going to be some big time competition there. And Sega said, you play well and you do what's expected, you're going to play. And everything is earned, not given, as you know, he says in his process oriented approach to what he expects from coaches to players. And again, I think the message for the players is very clear. There's no gray area with Sig. It's pretty black and white when it comes down to the expectations and how you get on the field. And I do think Indiana's defensive line now is going to be very, very good heading into week 1, but not even that as much as anything is that getting Wyatt back and Daley back out of, you know, two of the best players from the defense a year ago was not even expecting it. So there are going to be other players throughout the country that's going to have the same thing, going to be a bolster for teams. I don't know. I haven't really seen anybody else at this point to bring it up. But anyway, we'll keep and get, Alec Lasley's feeling on this as well as Zach's. And like I said, it can not only be a positive with everything. Josh Hoover and the quarterback position. Again, I think everything from Josh Hoover's point of view is done well. And right now he is one of those guys that has been in the top 10 right now, I believe, for a Heisman favorite heading into 2026. CJ Carr has been kind of the top choice of this moment in time, but we'll see what all happens there. But before we head out to a break, I don't know if anybody saw Purdue's new athletic director make a, I don't know. I'll let you guys take this and see what you think of it. But I'm still trying to figure out why he went with this angle. Let's hear from the new AD from Purdue.
Every current student athlete will hear this message repeatedly. We are here to win championships. If you don't want to win championships, go to Indiana.
Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage, and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave & Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our all-new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch all your team's wins on a 40-foot screen and 30 HD TVs. And level all up with the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game. Private game suites, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's on 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back here to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. As you saw there, right in before we went to break, the new Purdue AD was some comments that I'm not quite sure what he was trying to get from there, but other than perhaps maybe trying to be a little funny, we'll get Alec Lasley's take on that from the Hoosier.com. And Alec, pleased to have you here this morning. And did you get to see that little clip of the Purdue AD and his, I guess he called it a jab at Indiana, but doesn't make quite much sense. What was your take on that one?
No, I think it, someone who comes in trying to make a statement and completely tone deaf with that statement. I mean, look, I think everyone, right, if it was maybe before last year, be a little bit different. But the fact that, you're fresh off of a national title and, it looks like this football program is trending in an absolutely vastly different direction than Purdue's football program. Just from that standpoint alone, I think it was kind of ridiculous. And then you look at the basketball side of things. Obviously, Purdue's been in a much different area than what Indiana has been, but still hasn't accounted for anything from a national perspective. And then you go from sport to sport, and there's really no competition from that aspect. I saw some people saying that he was trying to refer to championships in life, and that was the comment that he was trying to make. But I think everyone understands what he was trying to say, which did not hit. And again, very, very tone deaf. Not the way that you want to be, really standing out for your introductory press conference as an athletic director.
Yeah. I guess he was trying to give his best version of himself, trying to be Signetti and try to say something bold and frank, and it just kind of end up backfiring in that respect. But hey, that's what happens when you're a rookie and it's your first day on the job. You say things you shouldn't be saying in that respect. But anyway, it's more important that we focus on what's happening there in Bloomington. You've been on campus for the past couple days and been able to observe some of the practice. SIG is not very open, I guess you would say, with the practice concept, other than maybe the first 15 minutes of a practice is kind of the, I guess, rule of thumb, unless that's changed. But from what you've got to have seen and get a pulse of this football team early on, and they're not in pads and they're out there just in helmets and things, what was some of your impressions that you took from it, as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the biggest thing is this is a team that, is not coming in, cocky or arrogant or anything like that. I mean, from the moment that we, the media, were able to step on the field, practice started around like 9:15 both days, give or take a little bit. But the team had already been out there for probably about 20 minutes, 30 minutes before, just doing individual things, even group aspects, but not, the official start of practice. But everything is, high competition level. And I talked to a couple of people yesterday, just even, and I know we'll get into this, but with the Kellan Wyatt and Stephen Daley news, but that really reference this team now, the depth that they have, almost like an NFL type program, with how much talent and depth that they have. And you see that in the drills, whether it's the running back room, when they break out, whether it's the offensive line, the quarterbacks and the wideouts, the defensive backs. It was fun to watch them get after it the first couple of days. But look, I mean, it's you still feel like there's a little bit of, somewhat of a chip on their shoulder when you see them out on the field. Again, it's only through 2 days, right? We'll get to see them a couple more times next week and the week after. But through the first 2 days, it's a team that clearly is still in attack mode and clearly is, kind of leaning on the phrase that Tyree Tucker had at Big Ten Media Days, which were still the hunters. They want to go out and they want to attack again. They don't feel like they're defending anything. And you get that with how competitive, with how juiced up, with how fiery and competitive the individual drills are, how quick moving, the up-tempo pace. It's very structured, very detailed. But it's also, interesting, right? Because we've heard, the lack of micromanagement, right, from Curt Cignetti and the times that he's talked about practice, specifically about wanting his, positional coaches to run their individual drills. He'll walk around. So we got in maybe 9:20-ish. I didn't really see him until 9:50 when he was at midfield. He doesn't really demand a lot of attention. He kind of just roams around in the background. He'll speak up right when he wants to, and they're all minor things, right? Where it's, they either need to move the ball back an extra yard and a half because they weren't exactly where they needed to be, or whatever the case may be. I mean, it is very structured, very detailed, and it's a team that's very player led as well, and you can feel the experience and the leadership. It's almost a not an anxious energy, but there's a different buzz and energy of a group that's like, okay, we feel like we belong here. Now let's go kind of continue to show that we belong here, rather than we need to show that we should demand some attention. They're past that phase, so it's a good step mentally, I think, for all the new guys too. Right, to obviously be around such an experienced group who've been in this program now for 2 years, going on their third. And again, you get guys like Kellan Wyatt and Stephen Daley back who were vital parts of that team last year. And you look at that front seven, and I didn't see many weaknesses in defense before. We can talk a little bit about the second corner. Outside of Jamari Sharp, kind of who that's going to be, Rylan Gandy or AJ Harris. They obviously bring back, Amari Farrell, bringing Preston Zachman, a seventh-year guy from Wisconsin. They have Byron Baldwin, right? So the safety and kind of the rover position seems pretty set. The kind of third linebacker maybe was a question mark, but I think you kind of cross off that and check that box with Kellan Wyatt, because he played outside linebacker at Maryland before he came over to Indiana. So I think that versatility gives him a little bit more, even with Stephen Daley. Right now, you guys have that group has a lot of additional edge rushers where you can, maybe eliminate the need to have a third linebacker and play a little bit more versatile on the edge. Toby obviously has the ability to kind of play that hybrid role as well. So I really didn't see a lot of weaknesses in that defense before. They are more athletic than they were last year. They're faster and quicker than they were last year. And now I think you get the physicality that maybe you were missing a little bit with Kellan Wyatt and Stephen Daley back on the field. And you look at that rotation again in that front seven. I just don't know how they're going to work in terms of, how many snaps each and every guy's going to get, right? Because you could go three deep on the defensive tackle, the stud, and the edge, and you wouldn't lose a single bit of talent there. So they are extremely deep from that standpoint. And it's going to be obviously a huge asset to Brian Haynes when he's attacking and getting downhill with this, very attack first type defense.
Yeah, there's no question that they've got plenty of depth and talent at a position that every team in the country would basically love to have that depth that Indiana has. No team, unless you're the Ohio States and Alabamas of the world that are continuing burning out talent. Indiana has got 10 bodies there right now that can play, and you still don't know what a kid like Javarius Hill, what he's going to bring to the table. And you worry about their development of those players because now you've got two guys back that you weren't expecting, and Owen Somney, and I think it's, what is it? I don't know how to pronounce the other kid from Kansas State. Yeah, Chitty. You got to see what those guys bring to the table as well. So we'll find out, because I don't think they're going to bring Kellan or Stephen and rush them to have them ready week 1 against North Texas. I think that's going to be more of a progression, in my opinion, is how I think they'll handle it, because you got Ndukwe, you got Burnham, from a kid from Notre Dame, who's also a pretty good player. Now, he stood up and played some linebacker at Notre Dame as well. So there's a guy that fits in that role of put him down in rush situations, stand him up in pass situations, or maybe they kick him to the inside to see what he brings there because of depth. I don't know, but I don't think the defense is going to be a concern all that much heading into the season. Offensive line wise, what was your take there with that position? I've said before, they have 13 bodies. Now they've added to that, of course, some, but I was concerned of their depth at that position. From the standpoint, I don't think it's as deep it was a year ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think they are bigger from top to bottom and more physical than a year ago. I think they may lose, obviously, not obviously, they clearly lose the leadership of Pat Coogan. I think you lose a little bit more versatility in what they had in the rotation a year ago, but from a, frontline aspect, before you get into the depth portion of it, I mean, that is one of the better offensive lines around the country. Clearly, once again, you obviously get Carter Smith back, who missed spring ball. Drew Evans, Bray Lynch, right? That's the left side of that line. I mean, that you can't get a more experienced blind side for Josh Hoover, right? So from that standpoint, you feel really, really good about the left side of the line. Right side, obviously, you move Johnny and Joe Brunner in different positions than maybe what they were expecting. Johnny played both guard and tackle last year. Brunner's played a little bit of both, but he has the size and he has the athleticism to be able to play both. So you still get versatility.
That's the question. Yeah, that's the question I have with Brunner, because he's a big body, 6'7", 313, and this offensive line has been made in the image of Coach Bosted. When you think about it, that Wisconsin type of offensive line, big, strong bodies that are there. I don't know if Brunner necessarily has that athleticism or quickness.
Quickness maybe, but I think his length and his size makes up for it. And I think that's why you feel really good about having even more of a mobile quarterback with Josh Hoover if things break down on the right side, because he will have obviously the ability to see things coming. He'll have the ability to make a couple quick movements. But I think from the right side there, yes, maybe the overall quickness is a little bit down, but true strength and length and size, I think, is much greater than the left side of the line. From that standpoint, you're extremely quick and physical on the left side. I think you do have a little bit more athleticism from kind of a length perspective on the right, and I think that makes up for some of that lack of quickness. But look, I mean, Bob Bostad and Kurt Cignetti know what they're doing with the offensive line. I mean, it's clear that this is not a work in progress per se. It's definitely a progression. But it's not something, and the whole offensive line, to an extent, is a progression because, you miss Carter Smith, the backbone of this offensive line in spring ball. Drew Evans and Bray Lynch missed, a little bit of time here and there in spring ball. You're now obviously moving Johnny over to a different spot, Brunner over to a different spot, right? So there's a lot of shifting and moving going on from that standpoint. But they're all skilled enough, and Johnny obviously got the experience last year to be able to step up. I thought it was interesting when, Kurt Cignetti talked about Johnny specifically at Big Ten Media Days about him needing to get more mature. I think being around that veteran-led offensive line is going to speed up his progression even more, which is going to be big, yes, for this year, but even in the future years, because this offensive line's gone, after this year. So you're going to have to really, really get people up to speed to be able to play a veteran role next year. And I think that's what they're looking and leaning on Johnny for. And he has a skill. I mean, he's a very talented. I think that was one of the biggest surprises last year at how quickly he came along. And not just a rotational setting, a true
they played
guy
him at both guard. I played him at guard and tackle.
Exactly. So he has that ability to do it. Now it's about being more consistent. Just again, the day in and day out consistency that Kurt Cignetti talks about. Because I think if he does, he's definitely the X factor of that offensive line. There's no question about it. But I think the experience that he can rely on for last year, and then some of that experience of stepping up into bigger roles in the spring because of some of those bodies missing time, I think is really going to help over the course of the next couple of weeks before we get to the season opener. But yeah, I don't think there's any question that the offensive line is once again going to be a huge strength of this team. And it's just crazy to think about, 24 months ago, right? Even just 12 months ago, still a ton of questions about what this team was going to be able to provide at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, based off of their performances against Notre Dame and Ohio State the year prior. And now there's no question that not just it being a strength of the team, it is a clear, one of the better overall offensive and defensive units from a line of scrimmage standpoint in the entire country. And that's crazy in just a short amount of time, the ability to flip everything. With still, look, let's be honest, you still have a lot of the same, core guys, right, from 2 years ago. You still have, obviously Daniel Ndukwe and Mario Landino didn't play a whole lot 2 years ago, didn't play a whole lot last year until the back end of the season, right, when Ndukwe and Landino really stepped up. But they have a lot of still guys who have played a ton of snaps over the course of the last 12 months that, may have progressed a lot quicker than what this staff was even anticipating. And I think that just shows, right, the ability to get these guys in early in the spring if they're young, get them through the playbook once already, have them go through a full summer and then get back, right, because that's the biggest thing that they need going into to this season is just the stability there and the availability, which they didn't have in the spring.
Well, we're going to take a break here real quick, and then we'll come back and continue this conversation. There's even more to talk about offensively and some other position groups, and we'll get Alec's take all on that here in the second part. Stay right where you're at. This is Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC, local lives here.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games every Sunday through Thursday, a new menu to dig into, and next-level upgrades like private game suites, the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington, 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back here to Indiana Sports Beat Radio alongside with Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and a lot of questions here on the board that probably want to take a quick look at some of them. I know that there was one there, and I'm trying to find it, Alec, and maybe you saw it as well. The gist of it was the question is there a time that Wyatt and Daley are basically okay from a eligibility standpoint, or is there still jeopardy with them potentially, this thing going from positive to negative in a flip of a minute?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the latter there, but at the same time, right, there's so many players that they would have to pull this back on that it's almost, I don't want to say, a given, but there's a lot of positive thoughts and conversations going on that this will at least drag on for a while in terms of having their eligibility maintained. And look, this is, not the exact same thing, but similar, right, to the to the Lou Moore case last year, right, where he initially was eligible, then pretty much a week before the regular season, he was ruled ineligible. Then that's when he, went to court and sued, and then it was a week-by-week basis, and he didn't get fully cleared until I think right before that Illinois game in week 4, week 3 there, in between 3 and 4, kind of midweek leading into that game. So, this is probably going to be going on for a while, and it's not something that's going to be set in stone by the season beginning, at least in my opinion. I think there's still going to be a lot of back and forth, not in terms of ruling guys eligible and ineligible back and forth, but I don't think there's going to be a set, okay, these guys are 100% good to go, by the start of the season. I think it'll drag on a little bit. And look, that's why, Curt Cignetti's been, playing two sides of the fence here, where he wouldn't bring these guys back if he didn't have a really, really good feeling that they were going to be eligible for the entire season. Because he's not going to give them snaps and take it away from younger guys or any of these other guys who he brought in if he didn't think that they'd be able to impact, the team on the field. So that's number one, right? He has a good sense of kind of where this is. And there's a reason, he obviously kind of brought them in now versus either, waiting a couple of weeks. Maybe he wasn't, fully confident that would happen, but that's the case where he is now. He seems pretty confident that it will happen, that they'll be fully eligible. And then now you move into, the season and still probably play at a week by week basis. But I think you feel pretty good about, where they're going to be long term. But even Curt Cignetti said, right, it's, still, if it works out, great, if not, right, it is what it is. But again, I think Curt Cignetti doesn't do things unless he is fully confident that they will turn out in his favor. And so I think he's pretty confident that just as almost every coach is at the moment, that this is going to be something that'll be, while not fully set in stone, pretty much written in very dark pencil before the season starts. And then initially, probably a couple weeks in, probably, fully in pen.
Yeah, I don't. I guess you say never in any form or fashion about whether somebody can or can't.
It would be crazy for the NCAA to do this. So
yeah,
they've done a lot of crazy things. So I guess again, never say never. But based off of everything, it just seemed both on the basketball and football side, they've let the floodgates open, right? They've given too many players eligibility, and they've won no cases. So it does not seem like there's a true precedent that they can now go back on from that standpoint and lean on, because almost every single player who sued has gotten eligibility, whether it was this year or last year. And this ruling, last week, I think, to go on Friday. It was Friday or Saturday or something like that. But, that seemed to really be the last straw in terms of where things stood with a lot of these fifth-year guys. And it's crazy to think guys like Kellan Wyatt and Stephen Daley had not redshirted before, right? I mean, this all goes back to, if they had redshirted, they would not be eligible for this. So the fact that, again, they played those 4 years, played in all 4 years, but are looking to get that additional year. Kudos to them, right, for being able to play, year one and make an impact, but also just shows you kind of where the state of, college athletics is now from that side of things.
Yeah, and I guess the thing with the NCAA and where this is, I don't know, because the judge that made this ruling that basically opened the flood doors for the 2022 class was a federal judge out in Colorado. Most of these suits would take place at the state level, if you kind of look at it, because it was a little bit a better shield for them because of state versus federal. I don't know, because if it's at the federal level, that helps speed up the emergency, request and things like that. But again, I think you go with the mindset you're going to go. And if they come and say, hey, we're going to change it, then they'll change it and they won't be eligible. But I don't think it's going to be one of those things that if you play these guys and all of a sudden they come out and say, hey, they're not eligible to play in every game they played in, you've got the forfeit. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. Have you heard anything on Stays, the tight end, and whether or not?
So Stays and even Jonathan Brady kind of are the other two that do have that potential eligibility to come back. Wyatt and Daley were the two that kind of stuck out the most in terms of what we were hearing right after the fact. Obviously, things two ways move very quickly after the initial ruling happened, and things are still kind of a fluid process when it comes to that. You still need to look at roster size, right? I think this put Indiana one over the roster limit. Yeah. Not scholarship limit, right? Because there's no scholarships from that standpoint, but the roster size. So that if they were to bring back additional bodies, they'd have to figure out a way to make it work within the roster size. Which, look,
they're just going to cut somebody.
Yeah, but also Kurt Cignetti's not going to, again, do something and bring someone back if that's going to really impact the overall team chemistry. I don't know if Stays truly fits into what Indiana's looking for.
Yeah, that's another question too, right?
He obviously an experienced guy in the tight end room, which you don't have, but he's also not. He doesn't bring a skill set that they're necessarily lacking, right? If he were more built around the Zach Horton or Riley Nowakowski, physical pass and run blocking tight end mold, I think it'd be a no-brainer because that is something that they truly are missing. But, Brock Schote, any of those, Barker, any of these other guys are more, athletic and have the ability to play out in open space from a pass catching standpoint. There's a reason from a, blocking perspective that Stays was not on the field last year. When he was on the field, he was apt to go catch a ball. I think it was only, he had 201 snaps from a run blocking standpoint last year, and graded out at basically 57 per Pro Football Focus, which is not good. And then on the pass blocking standpoint, I think there were only 14 snaps, 20 snaps that he played. And that significantly decreased as the season went on when they got into Big Ten play because he just is not a blocking tight end. So from that aspect, I just don't know if he truly fits into what they need. We'll see. I don't think either of them really fit into what they need right now. But you never know, right? Kurt Cignetti is if he sees a hole, he's going to add someone. From that standpoint, I think we all know that.
Yeah. Continuing on with the offensive side of the ball here for a little bit. You brought up the tight ends position, and I know that's the biggest concern offensively this team has going into this season because they really have nobody returning, and they're all young pups, and I saw Brock Schott play up here in Northeast Indiana. The kid's a flat out player. He's big, he's strong, he can run, he's so athletic. I have no doubt that he'll be able to block at the point of the attack. The only thing is with him or whoever's coming, there with him is their freshman, sophomore. I mean, that's the facts. But that doesn't mean they cannot go play at a high level. What has been your take a couple days just watching that position? And again, you're not getting a great pulse on it because they're not in full pads, but you at least get to see them run around a little bit.
Yeah, it's the tight end room is young. Schott looks big. He stands out right away from that aspect.
I'm sorry, who did you say that was?
Brock Schott.
Oh, okay.
He looks bigger significantly than what he looked like last year, and then what he looked like when he came into the program in the spring. Obviously, dealt with some shoulder injuries last year and had the surgery that kind of limited him in the beginning of spring ball. But he not only looks like a Big Ten tight end. He looks like a Power 4 starting tight end right now, and that I think was one of the bigger question marks. Obviously this tight end room is still a huge question mark regardless,
right?
From that standpoint, but day one it was Schott who was the tight end one in the initial kind of simulated 30-yard drive that they do on air to kind of get practice started. Day two is Barker, right? So I think you take that for what it is. I think those two guys are probably going to be the two that stand out the most and continue to get a lot of the first team reps and probably split a lot of the initial snaps to begin the year before we truly see anyone kind of separate themselves. But I think it'll come down to those two, Barker and Schott. But Schott from what we've seen so far, and again, it's been limited. We'll get a little bit of an extra look next week.
Yes,
he's quicker than I think even what I was anticipating, and looks again. He looks like an athletic Big Ten tight end, not the Riley Nowakowski, Zach Horton tight end, right? A different mold because he's not a grind you in the dirt and push you down and bury you like those two were. He can get out into open space and break some tackles and be a little bit of a matchup problem for, a linebacker who may not be quick enough for him. And then, a slot or any kind of safety coming up who may not be big enough for him. And I think that was the biggest thing. Even, you go down, Trevor Gibbs looked bigger. He's the freshman. He's not going to play this year from that standpoint in the tight end room, but he's a guy who looks bigger than what we saw, whether it was in high school or coming into the program. I think this summer and getting a lot of these guys on campus in the spring was a huge benefit to a lot of what Curt Cignetti was hoping to get done, which was, yes, get these guys through the program once from a playbook perspective, and then have them strictly focus on their bodies once they're healthy. And that's what the tight end room specifically has been able to do. Because, again, 90% of these players in the tight end room missed probably about 75-80% of the spring. So this is really the first look that we've had at a fully healthy tight end room. And they look all a lot bigger than what I think a lot of people were anticipating. And yeah, I think that also shows you where there's probably two parts of that of, Curt Cignetti thinks there's probably a little bit more potential there than what I think was expected, which is why no additional tight end was brought in the portal from that sense, a true veteran. That's also why, we haven't seen a tight end at the 2027 recruiting level brought in the cycle, because I think he sees obviously a lot of youth and a lot of depth there. The second part of that is you don't want to bring in a veteran who may not be a surefire plug and play guy because you need to find out what you have. So we'll find out. I'd be highly surprised if Indiana goes without picking up a veteran tight end in both this past cycle, of the portal, the 2027 high school cycle, and then the portal cycle next year. They at least have to add another kind of veteran presence there because not all of these guys are going to pan out. And not all these guys are going to get playing time. And you can't just keep waiting on young guys to fully develop if they're not going to be able to get on the field. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, it's a huge fall camp for both of those guys.
Yeah. Well, just to feed on that, the Barker kid played at Kokomo. He played linebacker. He played tight end. He's a very athletic body type of kid. I would say he's similar to Brock in that respect, their athleticism, but that whole room has got athleticism in it. Gibbs is pretty darn good. He kind of looks like Nowakowski, a little bit, that type of body. So. And, the Parker Elmore, he's a young pup, but he's got tremendous athletic skills. Very long. And then, his deal is going to have to bulk up and learn to position. McFarland and Blake 30 are kind of in the same boat, but a very promising young group of players, a very promising top two that can, provide that needed responsibility as a blocker or being able to stay in similar personnel and widen them out, which I do think both those kids can do. And you got Gibbs as a potential true backup as a third teamer there. So I think that's going to be the position to watch in fall camp, how that progresses, whether they get from it. We know what they've got at wide receiver. I mean, my gosh, you throw anybody out there and you're going to be pretty darn good with everything. But again, the last position, I got about 5 minutes here, but running back room. I mean, BB looks, how's he looking? Because he's the one that if they can get him back to about where he was before he got hurt, that kid's got some true, legit breakaway speed.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's kind of the forgotten guy, right, from last year, but extremely, extremely talented in his own right. I mean, terrific player in the open field, and I think that's really what he showcased in the 2.5 games that he was available last year before suffering the ACL injury. I'll tell you what, he looks terrific in the again limited setting that we've been able to watch. The quickness is there, the agility is there, the athletic ability is there. That entire running back room, I think, is it's not an unknown per se, and it wasn't necessarily one of my bigger questions coming into the fall because I think we saw what Kobe Martin can do in limited opportunities, but a very, very big physical Big Ten style runner. Turbo Richard, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people as well. He's built very similarly to Kellan Black and Tyson Lawton, and may have a little bit, more agility than both. Maybe not the initial. He's a super quick back, but Kellan Black had a burst to him. I don't know if Turbo Richard has the burst that Kellan Black has. But I think Turbo Richard is a little bit more elusive and can move a little bit more left to right quicker to make some of those quick kind of twitch movements at the line of scrimmage. And that makes up for a little bit, maybe, again, does not lack a burst, but does not probably have that same burst that Kellan Black has, but a very physical downhill runner. Yeah, go ahead.
And what I was going to say there, because you brought up a good point about his athleticism and stuff, he was really good at Boston College out of the backfield catching the ball. I mean, he averaged 7.1 yards per reception, over 200 yards there. So he's an all-around type of back that Indiana likes to have because they can get him out in space.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, right? Because Indiana really hasn't used their running backs a lot in the passing game over the first 2 years of Kurt Cignetti's era. So we'll see kind of where that goes. And I think they'd rather, get guys like a Davion Chandler, who got some first team, second team kind of split up reps along with Tyler Morris there. I think they'd rather get the ball to those two and a guy like Nick Marsh, who I think is going to see a lot more targets behind the line of scrimmage. If we remember back, right, the very first play of the spring game was a pseudo screen to Nick Marsh 2 or 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he took it for 8 or 9 yards, right? Yeah. And so I think you're going to see a lot more. We'll see if this ends up happening, but I think you're going to see a lot more quicker passes this year. Get the ball out of Josh Hoover's hands quickly to a lot of these playmakers, because again, I've said this since the spring, this team is deeper and more talented from top to bottom at the skill position level than they were last year. And you want to utilize that. And the only way to, avoid turnovers from your quarterback is get the ball out quick, get the ball into your playmakers' hands at the wide receiver position and let them go. And you have, again, a guy like Tyler Morris, a guy like Davion Chandler who will do exactly that in the open field, and a guy like Nick Marsh who can just run over people with the ball and still has breakaway speed to get him the ball right away, right? Shaz Preston, a guy who we haven't really talked about, I think he's going to be very similar to Keyshawn Williams. He's looked really good in kind of those 10 to 12, 10 to 15-yard routes. I think that's going to be his bread and butter there. And then you have, again, the deep ball threat with Charlie Becker and still Nick Marsh. But the deep ball threat there with Charlie Becker, who, again, it's crazy when we're talking about, 4, 5, 6 guys deep, and we only mentioned Charlie Becker's name once.
Yeah, and then you look at it, Davion Chandler's a kid that I think is going to have a breakout year. He's only a sophomore. He showed promise last year, and I think he's a guy that is the one to keep an eye on in camp to see how he progresses, as would be LeBron Bond. So definitely got talent, definitely have a lot more to talk about when we talk about this, because we could set a lineup the next time you get here. We got the depth there. We'll just set the lineups for SIG heading into week 1. But appreciate you being here with us today. And
want to just answer one question that Brian has just talked about, cornerback, really quick. We'll see. The cornerback, the second cornerback, that's kind of the one huge position battle right outside of tight end that we haven't talked about a lot. Gandy was limited a little bit, but Kurt Cignetti said that he'll be back full go next week in practice. So it's still going to be Gandy and AJ Harris. There was a lot of talk before Gandy got hurt in the spring that he would probably be coming out of the spring as the second starter. But now we don't know, because he got hurt, and then AJ Harris tweaked a hamstring going into the spring game. So still a very open competition there. It's clear that Jamari Sharp has taken a huge step up even from the end of last year, getting a lot of praise from Kurt Cignetti. The big thing that I think sticks out the most is AJ Harris 100% has the skill and the talent to be cornerback number 2, but the word consistency was brought up probably 4 or 5 times when Kurt Cignetti answered a question about the second cornerback and specifically about AJ Harris. That's been his biggest thing, is being consistent. And Rylan Gandy's been in the system before. He knows the system. He's probably not, again, a guy who's going to have a huge ceiling, but his floor is way higher, in my opinion, than what AJ Harris brings from a consistent day in, kind of day out basis. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think you go wrong with either one of those guys. And I think both of those guys are going to play, almost 50-50, snaps for the majority of the game. So it really doesn't matter from that standpoint. But I think that's the big thing there, is I think Kurt Cignetti wants AJ Harris to be that guy, because he is absolutely way more skilled. That's no knock on Gandy, but there's a reason AJ Harris was a high 4, low 5-star guy coming out of high school. Just needs to bring the consistency every single play, or he's not going to be, that lockdown guy that they were anticipating.
Yeah. And got to get out of here, but have a great weekend on Gandy. He came here, was a starter at Pitt, did not play a lot last year. Now he's got an opportunity. Like you said, he understands consistency, rules of the day. Doesn't matter how good you think you are. It's that process of getting there and being consistent. Buddy, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week again, and talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. We're going to step aside, take a break, reset everything, and get ready for Zach Osterman here in a short bit. All right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage, and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave and Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our all-new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch all your team's wins on a 40-foot screen and 30 HD TVs. And level it up with the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game. Private game suites, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's on 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back here to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this great Friday. Is every Friday's a great Friday. If the sun's out, if not, it's okay too. It's time for the weekend and a lot of things going on. They had the Hall of Fame game last night. You got the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies coming up, and it gets you juiced up for football as well. But appreciate from Alec as well being here with us. And don't forget, they have a great sale going on right now. They're at thehoosier.com. You can get a subscription there for 75% off. Comes out to about $2.49 a month, but that's a pretty darn good deal for all the coverage you get from the group there, and all the sports you can handle, but also the On3 stuff, Rivals recruiting, and then of course you get the Athletic to go with it. But hey, it's a great deal. And right now we're going to bring in another great deal, is Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star. How are you today, my friend?
Hey, how are you doing? Sorry, I can't get my camera to turn on. My computer's being finicky. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay. No biggie there. But that's sometimes the way the old technology goes. It's not always dependable sometimes, and I can understand that as good as anybody when it comes to that stuff. But hey, man, glad you could take some time and be with us here again on this Friday. Really appreciate it. And we're kind of in that wrap up of the first 3 days of this camp, and I know this may be a little bit of redundancy because of what we talked with Alec with, but give different perspectives and from your standpoint and viewpoint of kind of these first couple days of camp, kind of the vibe that you're getting from this team, from this coaching staff. And hey, we know it's hard to overly formulate because you don't have the pads on and things of that nature. But I always think you can get a pretty good feel of the bounce and the step of the players and the coaches. What's your kind of viewpoint here after the first couple of days there at being on campus?
Yeah, I do think there is, and you're right. Like, listen, it's early. I can't remember if it was Cursing Eddie or Tom Allen that used to just call this pajamas time.
Yeah.
Because you can only wear shirts and shorts with your helmets.
Yeah.
But you do feel like there is the word probably is maturity. to this group, and what I mean by that is this is just a group that you can tell has played a lot of winning football together,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's not, obviously there's going to be new faces, especially in the portal era. We know there are going to be guys who are who have to get adapted in, and positions you're going to be asking questions about, and who's at tight end, and can they find some depth at linebacker, and how does Stephen Daley look now that he's back, and I guess Kellan Wyatt too. But there is really, though, at least as someone who has watched a lot of IU football practices and isn't here trying to rag on IU football teams in the past, but there is really kind of just this, when we talk so much about Kurt Cignetti's culture and the things that make it work, there is, to me anyway, just this sense that this group understands how to go about its business. Here's how we
Mm-hmm.
practice. Here's how we move from drill to drill. Here's how we get the most out of this. We know, of course, Kurt Cignetti's practices aren't very long, that he keeps them intentionally short and to the point and precise. And you feel like you have a team that just kind of that really mirrors a lot of his sort of best attributes as a coach in the practice setting. And that doesn't mean that they're going to go 16-0. That doesn't mean that after 2 days we've just decided that nobody else even bothers show up. But I do think, if we're asking the question of whether this program as a whole is going to be capable of kind of picking itself up after last season and all of the highs of last season, and for all that's worth celebrating, putting that in the past and just focusing on the here and now. You certainly don't sense from the behavior, from the mood, just from the vibe around practice, that anybody is thinking about anything other than what's in front of them. And I think if you're an Indiana fan, that's encouraging.
Yeah, and it's good to get that viewpoint. And I would say, listening to what some of the kids said yesterday after practice, I got the sense that they understand what they got to do. They understand the process that Cignetti runs, and they appreciate that because, again, short, sweet, but to the point. But they got great news with Stephen Daley coming back. That kind of put another little shot of adrenaline in the veins. And then all of a sudden you find out late yesterday that Wyatt's coming back. What has been your view on getting those two back, and how much has that infused that energy level at a position where technically they were pretty darn good going into camp, but they just got really good with those two guys coming back?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Kellan Wyatt plays some linebacker, and I don't know that for certain. That's as much as anything, frankly, that's just me doing the math and kind of looking around and saying they need help at linebacker. To your point, they don't really need help at end. It's interesting because he was listed as a linebacker at Maryland. I think they really still used him more like a rush end than like a linebacker. That wasn't, it like, in terms of his size, in terms of what you see on his film, like he was very much kind of a sort of a linebacker that was meant to play, like more as kind of a defensive end. And I won't pretend that I could tell you what Maryland was running defensively 3 years ago. And maybe it was maybe it was 3 down linemen and he was sort of like a stand-up end or something. But they need depth at linebacker. He's got some experience at that position. And as you said before, they don't need it at end. They don't need help at defensive end. And so I wouldn't be stunned if maybe you see him, flip back and forth a little bit. But again, with him and Daley both, it's the question of, they've not been in that sort of intensive day in, day out sort of football training mode. I know they've been training. I'm not saying they haven't been, but you're going to have to kind of catch them up physically first. And of course, in both their cases, they're also coming off of meaningful injuries. You don't have to rush either of them back. So you're not going to rush either of them back. So as much as we're talking about this being a boost for Indiana, and I think it is, I also wouldn't be shocked if we're not talking about Stephen Daley or Kellan Wyatt for at least maybe the first month of the season. And it's much more about, not unlike last year in Daley's case in particular, it's much more about where are you in late October and November? Not because it's not just conditioning, it's sharpness too, right? Like it's,
Right.
I think like for example, in Daley's case, Kurt Signetti said he'd been training for next year's NFL draft. Well, training for the draft, especially coming off of a pretty significant injury, is going to be a different kind of training than training for games. So there's bits and pieces to this that kind of it's good for Indiana initially, but it is also something that you sort of look at and say, like, this probably isn't worth kind of getting out over your skis on. These are guys that you're going to want to be able to give some time to get healthy and to really get to where they're going to need to be from a um from a sort of a football, not just again conditioning perspective, but sharpness perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think they're in a rush to get them ready for North Texas. I think you're going to see a very progressive, order to their getting them back into the swing of things. And there's no rush. And I do think there's some flexibility there. Don't forget that the Burnham kid from Notre Dame, he stood up a lot at Notre Dame. So they got some flexibility potentially with him as well there at the defensive line. So again, these are good problems to have. And again, I think it's going to be one of those things to see how this defense gels together. But on paper, it's a darn good looking defense from front to back, but we'll find out if that equates to the defense that they put on the field last year. At the linebacker position, I know Hardy and Jones are two guys that, have been in a backup role. Hardy starting for last year for the first time. Jones had a phenomenal year with what he was able to do. But looking at their depth there, what's your thoughts there of what you've maybe seen? Who are some things there that is going to be interesting to keep an eye on as they go through camp?
No, I mean, that's on the defense, as you say, the top end of that room is great. Those are both all Big Ten caliber players. USA Today Network put together a preseason poll where we wound up picking Elijah Hardy as Big Ten Defensive Preseason Player of the Year, and I know that doesn't, that's not something that you're going to worry too much about, but it's just a nod to how impactful these guys are to their reputations and just how sort of in what kind of high esteem the conference holds those two players. You just don't have much behind them at this moment in time. And from Indiana's perspective, you are going to need somebody step up. And this hardly makes me, Edward R. Murrow, but I was the one that asked Kurt Signetti, just basically, who are you watching behind that first group? Who are you watching behind those first two? Knowing that you're going to want some depth. Last year, Indiana, really for the last 2 years, if you want to go back to Jalen Walker's, 1 year with Indiana, Indiana's always kind of had three linebackers. Indiana's always had, Aiden Fisher, Jalen Walker, or if you want to think about it, in terms of the position they played, Jalen Walker or Elijah Hardy, and then Isaiah Jones as well. If we're looking at this group, there isn't an obvious third. You've got a couple guys that made some plays in the playoff last year, Jeff Utzinger, Caden Turner. You've also got some young players that the staff seems really high on. PJ Nelson, what's the Jacob Savage? And suddenly I couldn't get his name out of my mouth. Jacob Savage is a freshman that Kurt Cignetti has said looked good, kind of in the spring and had a good summer. But the point is, we're talking Jaden Williams, another freshman. We're talking about freshmen. We're talking about players that maybe you're not going to feel like, hey, we can definitely, count on this guy. We know exactly how this is going to work. So I'm kind of rambling through this answer. Forgive me. That's the one spot that is the one spot in the lineup, I think, where, on the defensive side, you are maybe looking for some sort of proven depth, and some, can you get somebody that maybe between camp and the first 3 or 4 games of the season really jumps off the page in the same way that, Isaiah Jones did 2 years ago, that Elijah Hardy did, sort of maybe in the combination of 2024 and early in 2025. Can you get that one more? Because I think all you need is the one more. Indiana's got a lot of depth at safety. I think they've got a lot of different options, and they could probably just play 5 defensive backs a lot. But you're probably going to want just a little bit of that assurance in case one of those two goes down for any length of time.
Yeah, and I agree. That's kind of what they have now. Caden Turner, I think, has been a steady Eddie for them. He could probably get them out of a game. Whether or not he could play a numerous amount of snaps and be overly effective at it, I think that would be the question. But there's no question he provides some stability there. And I think it was Unsinger is the other young man there too. But I'm curious to see how, like you just brought up, Savage, the kid out of Kentucky, I think he's a baller. And then, Jaden Williams and Olinger both were 4-star recruits. So it'll be interesting how they bring those young guys along, because they know that they still got to develop them for years and years to come. You brought up the defensive secondary, and you lose D'Angelo Pons. We know that is a guy that you probably are not going to replace in terms of what he brought to the table. However, I feel pretty good, and I think you just alluded to a little bit. It's a pretty solid group at in the secondary, to the point of you may have packages where you're playing 5 DBs, or maybe in some cases 6. Who knows? But you got to feel confident there. How's your feel been the first couple of days just watching that group running around?
No, I think that group in the aggregate is a strength. You're right. You're not, a player as talented as D'Angelo Pons just doesn't get replaced very easily. And I don't think Indiana would necessarily, think that was going to be the case. But you have Jamari Sharp back there, who I think, probably frankly got a little bit underrated last season because of how good D'Angelo Pons was. You have Amari Farrell back there. We know the staff loved Byron Baldwin. Last season just didn't see as much of him because of the injury that kind of held him out for the first part of the year. You picked up a couple, meaningful transfers there, and Jaquan Sanks and Preston Zachman. Also AJ Harris, at the other side, the other corner spot. Kurt Cignetti name dropped Rylan Gandy the other day. I think there's been a sense, at least from people I've talked to, that Gandy has really kind of stepped forward and could potentially kind of be, could be the kind of player that pushes maybe Harris for a spot, for that sort of starting corner spot opposite Jamari Sharp. There's a lot to like about that secondary group. And the other thing I'll say too is, there is no better friend to a secondary than an elite defensive line. And as good as this defensive line projects to be, I think it is fair to say, that secondary is going to have a pretty good time, because I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity to make plays against offenses that, frankly, I think are really going to struggle to turn that defensive line around.
Yeah, no question there. I do think that's the thing about this defense that's exciting is, depth. There's a little bit of question, maybe some at at linebacker where they're at there. But overall, when you look at it, there's a lot of bodies that can play, and there's only 11 spots out there. So you're going to have to figure out how to keep guys happy. But I think the rotational aspect is going to be an important part of this defense next year to keep them fresh at all times. And I do think they can find a two deep that could play significant snaps no matter which group's out there. I wanted to jump over to a couple positions offensively here before you get out of here. But, I think the big question right now, we know that Josh Hoover is, spinning the ball pretty good. That's never been a problem for him. He's a good, accurate thrower, got great mechanics and stuff. I think the biggest question there is, does he look comfortable in this Mike Shanahan / Kurt Signetti offense? And on top of that, there's a depth issue there because you've got Wilson, who understands things, been in the program for a year, and now Tyler Cherry coming back into the fold. Talk a little bit about that position and maybe what you've observed here in a couple of days, because you can get a good feel for quarterbacks, even though you're not in pads.
Yeah, I mean, it does start with Hoover as we all expected. I think maybe the question we had out of spring, because Tyler Cherry's name came up more than once, was, could he sort of push Wilson out as the number 2? I think as things stand, it still feels like that's probably Wilson's job. I still sort of wonder what the answer to the question of who the backup would be if, tomorrow the backup, or tomorrow we found out Josh Hoover was out for a month. I wonder if maybe the answer to that question would be any different at that point. But I think with, again, Tyler Cherry clearly had a really good spring. I think as important as that was, Indiana's still not going to rush him along. Indiana's still not going to obviously risk his health in any meaningful way. That kind of goes without saying. I think if you're Indiana, probably what you're excited about with Cherry is that he just missed so much time. And for him to have been able to kind of pick things back up so quickly, I think is what's encouraging. But I still think you're talking, as things stand right now, about Grant Wilson. Josh Hoover obviously is the number 1, and Grant Wilson is the number 2.
And then you got Jacob Bell's there. I know there's some other guys that are in that mix there with Tyler Cherry. Any of those other guys step in and kind of like, wow, that kid's looking pretty good right now, spinning it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's kind of jumped off the page yet. And again, we're also limited, unfortunately, in our practice. He's not kicking the door open.
That's right.
For hours on end. But it's you forget, like with Bell, for example, he was not an early enrollee. So last winter was his first. I know he was with the program, but he committed in February, so he didn't have that sort of come in the January, get your spring camp, and then your redshirt year and all that. So he's I don't want to use the word behind because that makes it sound bad, but I mean, he is a player who is kind of not necessarily on the trajectory that a lot of quarterbacks anymore, because so many of those guys do enroll early, kind of get on. But I think, again, right now it's very much starts with Wilson and Hoover. And then I think the question you have, if you're Indiana, is, how far has Cherry come? You knew he had a good year, he had a good spring. How far has he come in terms of maybe building on that, having a good summer, and potentially kind of getting his career, when I say back on track, I mean, back to sort of that relatively linear developmental path that you want your quarterbacks to be on.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too is, I think what they have there with Josh, very confident in his abilities in this system. I think you'll see a different version of what he was at TCU without any doubt. And we're going to have to see how the, Cherry and all the young pups come along. But I think you feel good that Wilson's there in the case that they have to get out of the game. Then they'd have to sit and reevaluate where they're at and what needs to be done. But when we could talk about different positions, the offensive line, tight end. But I guess what this is the thing that I was thinking as well is what is or was your biggest question about this Indiana team entering in the last couple days, and have you seen some things over the last couple of days that's begun to answer that question that maybe you had?
That's a good question. Positionally, it's stuff like tight end, which, we're still sort of figuring out. I think, that there always remained just the question of just kind of like, where would this team's head be? They won a national championship. They had such a compressed off season. It was just hard to know. And to kind of come out there and for things to just, I think I said a minute ago, just seems so professional, so straightforward. Like this is not a group that looks like it is living, any of its sort of, recent glories. This is a group that very much looks like it has tasted that success, that it recognizes, what contributed to that success, and that it's just trying to repeat that process again. And if you're Indiana, cursing anyone out of his way to bring up on his own media days that he doesn't have those James Madison players who helped him kind of install the foundations of his culture at Indiana. But I think, he said basically the guys I have with me now, those are the James Madison guys, because they've been with me for 2.5 years. They understand my process. They understand, my culture and how everything works and why. You certainly get the sense that, yes, there were so many guys that were seen as kind of totems of that team last year. Your Mendozas and Cugans and Ponzas and Fishers and Kamaras. Those guys are gone, but you get the sense that there is a culture here that Charlie Becker replaced them, that Isaiah Jones replaced them, Tyreek Tucker just stepped into that role, Jamari Sharp, Amari Farrell, whoever. That there is just kind of this, hey, this is just business as usual. This is how we win here, kind of attitude. And I think that's been impressive to see. And again, I think from Indiana's perspective, you just sort of wondered, especially with a compressed off season, would they find that quickly again? And it seems like they have.
Well, hey, Zach, I appreciate you being here today and filling us all in. Get over to the Indy Star, and Zach's has great coverage of camp and some other odd bits and tidbits, so to speak. But really appreciate you being here. Go ahead there, Mr. Jim Coyle.
Yeah, hey, before you get away, I wanted to make sure we bring up the fact that Zach and Mike Nislak have a book out. I know you may have talked about it before, but I wanted to remind everybody that that thing is out there, and I look forward to reading it. But anything that's written by that pair is exceptional. They're two of the best writers around, and I don't mean around Bloomington. How's that been? What was that process like, Zach? Writing a book? I mean, was that your first?
It was our first, yeah, both of us. And it was a lot of fun. It had to happen, very quickly. The whole sort of the whole sort of idea behind it was to kind of get back and re-report the story, and we did. We talked to about 70 people, all in. But in the same sort of space of time, it was to get it done quickly enough to try and have it out for the season that's about to start. And it was a lot of work. And what I'm finding out now too is that it was the work begins again when you have to get people to go buy it, and to get people to go sort of to get bookstores involved, and to get events set up, and to get people to pre-order it. It's on Amazon, is where you can do that if you want to do it. It's out September 22nd. But that's where it's a whole second sort of job when it's time to convince people to go buy the dang thing. But it was a lot of fun, and I think we're supposed to see our early copies of the book pretty soon, which means that, you know, obviously the printing has begun, and that's exciting. I'm looking forward to just getting a hand on it. But it was a fascinating experience. Like I said, it was our first time. It was the first time for both of us.
Yeah, I look forward to getting to reading it as well. And for the fans, I wanted to make sure that we mention that and get that out there. Be prepared for when that thing comes out to make sure everybody gets a copy. It's something that they'll want to keep. So you get to do the big book storming tour, I guess, right? Going to the bookstores and sitting at the table and doing the signings.
We'll have a few. Yeah, we'll do some.
The ISC Sports Network.
An event at Morgenstern Books over near College Mall here in Bloomington. I believe that's the biggest independent bookseller in the state, if I'm not mistaken. I think we'll probably have some Barnes and Noble events as well, and a few other things that are still kind of in the works. So once the time comes, we will obviously promote the hell out of those, and hope people are able to come out and join us, kind of both before the book comes out, talking about the book. You know, we've already done a little bit of that. And then obviously once the book comes out, having some events, and there's even, I think, an author fair that I think we're scheduled to be a part of in Indianapolis the day of the Big Ten title game. So if Kurt Signetti wants to do the decent thing and get back to the Big Ten championship game, that would certainly help us, because we'd love to be at that author fair with downtown Indianapolis crawling with IU fans on December, what is that? I think it's December 6th this year, December 5th maybe. So yeah.
Forward to it. Congratulations, and we will keep talking about that each week. So wanted to make sure we mention that.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I love talking about it. Believe me, we put enough work into it. I'm more than happy to talk about it.
See you. And Coach, I know you're going to head out to a break now, right?
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming, or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC. Local lives here.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games every Sunday through Thursday, a new menu to dig into, and next-level upgrades like private game suites, the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington, 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back here to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on Friday, ready for the weekend. We're getting you started off right, and just had Zach Osterman from the Indy Star on, and we're just going to segue right into Mr. Bill Bender here from the Sporting News. And of course, Jim Coyle will be joining us again as well. But Bill, how you doing this Friday?
Hey, Coach, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. That's a big thing for us to get your perspective on a lot of things. And of course, college football is the rule of thumb. And I guess one big question I would start out with for you is kind of what is the thing that you're watching as of right now kind of develop, or what you wanted to see maybe from a team or just the national landscape perspective as well? What was that one thing maybe that you're looking at and really honing in on here on this college football season?
I'll be going out to Ohio State practice on Saturday, and obviously they were voted number 1 in the preseason coaches poll. Not a surprise. I mean, that's like one of those safe picks with the amount of talent that they have. Julian Sayin will be made available, and I think he's one of the more interesting players of the year, the only returning Heisman finalist. Yet, if you ask most college football fans, they'll find a half dozen quarterbacks to put ahead of him. So, I think they're one team to keep an eye on. The dynamic between Indiana and Oregon, and then outside the Big Ten, probably Alabama's quarterback competition. Who's going to take the job there? Because that's another team that I think they're a wild card in terms of the national championship hunt, and especially coming off the last time we all saw them, it was getting outclassed, outmanned, out everythinged when they played Indiana in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and that for Coach DeBoer it's a big year for him. I know they gave him an extension and things like that, but I'm really it's going to be an interesting situation there in the SEC, having not won a national title in 3 seasons, especially to the Big Ten. A lot of bolstering about the quote unquote middle of the SEC at the media days and such, but I don't think that works all that well. So that will be a conference race to really see who comes out of it, as well as, the Big Ten. And you brought up Indiana, the preseason coaches poll. I don't know if it does any good other than to have disagreements and such, but the one thing that caught me off guard is, Indiana being number 6, but having 14-point first place votes for being number 1 overall. There was a time that if Indiana was in the top 10, there would be a joyous thundering coming out of Bloomington that they had a team in the top 10, but there were sports personalities as well as some, well-known fans that feel like Indiana got hosed on that and on that ranking. What's your take on that?
Well, it can't be us at Sporting News. We have Indiana number 1, and I think our logic is much like the first place votes is, they are the defending national champion. They do have enough talent coming back and additional talent like Josh Hoover, Nick Marsh, Turbo Richard to make another run. So I think I get it. That always looks funny. But as we've talked about on here over the last couple of weeks, and I think there really are 7 teams that are capable of winning the national championship, Indiana being one of them. And any one of those top 6, Miami being 7, any one of those top 6, if you had them at number 1, I wouldn't have complained. And I'm talking about Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, maybe a little bit pushback if it were Oregon, just because, again, last time we saw them, Indiana hammered them. And Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame. Any one of those 6 teams, I think, could be holding up that trophy at the end of the year. And the other interesting piece of it is all 6 have a really good quarterback. All 6 have a quarterback that they think is going to be in the Heisman Trophy race, and Miami with Darian Mensah as well. So
yeah,
it makes for a really interesting, season to me when you have all 7 tied to their quarterback like that. But to answer your question, I don't know about you. Indiana where they are is too low, given that they had that many first place votes.
Yeah, I think that was the unique aspect of it. I think one thing I think I heard, and I'm trying to paraphrase it a little bit here, but it was the first time that the defending national champion in 15 years wasn't in the 1 or number 2 slot, and the first time a top 10 team such as Indiana that got 14 first place votes, which is the second most in the poll, but still wasn't one too. So there was kind of some ironic things there. And I've always said about preseason polls, hey, look, there's not enough data to get a true view or feeling on these teams. Again, like you said, there's always that we'll fall back to last year where they're at and such. But I think it's good for the fans and everyone out there to have those debates. And, we're number one, you're number two, all that good stuff. But time will tell when the ball gets placed between the white lines here in a couple of weeks on how good teams are and how good teams may not be in that respect. But, we've talked a lot of college football, Indiana this morning, and it's, again, a lot of excitement in Bloomington and throughout the state of Indiana. But, the NFL preseason kicked off last night, which was always ironic when I was watching TV and all of a sudden there's a preseason game there in Canton. It was Carolina and Phoenix. Carson Beck made his debut. He looked pretty good last night. But the big thing is this weekend is the Hall of Fame. And that is always a traditional approach to it with the game, and then the segue into the Hall of Fame. And hopefully the weather holds up and all that good stuff. But what do you think about this year's Hall of Fame class heading into the NFL preseasons and such? I just kind of was caught off guard that we're already there. You know what I mean? Like,
watch the game last night. What a finish. Haynes King, exciting player at Georgia Tech, runs it in at the end. And, preseason football sometimes is a little bit of, you do treat it as background noise, but I was still watching and sitting there and enjoying it. I'm spoiled to live just a couple hours away from Canton. I've been there so many times, and, even if it's for like a lacrosse tournament, and you're just kind of, you don't take it for granted, all the history in that building. And I've every chance I have to tour it, I do. And what a class too, right? Like Drew Brees, we have a list of like the modern era quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. He's a tough one to rank because he is, obviously prolific and the numbers are unbelievable. But we were going back and forth yesterday. I said, is he better than Brett Favre? I mean, Brett Favre was a 3-time MVP. And what I was surprised me that Drew Brees never won the NFL MVP award. So he's a good one. Luke Kuechly, right down the road, a Cincinnati kid, Cincinnati St. X, and, Catholic school kid, really good person. He looks like he definitely lost some weight since his playing days, but I still wouldn't want to get tackled by him. He's an incredible person. And Vinatieri, Larry Fitzgerald, all-time, both of those guys, all-time good guys. And then Roger Craig, who I wrote a little bit about for us, it sneaks up on you how good he was. A trend-setting running back, first running back to have 1,000 yards receiving, 1,000 yards rushing in the same season as that in that Bill Walsh West Coast offense. Coach, look at his Super Bowl stats. He was incredible in the 3 Super Bowls he played in. So, it's a really awesome class.
Yeah, and, he was a second-round pick in '83, and he was, I think, 49th pick overall out of Nebraska. And you're correct. He was a guy that kind of rose to the occasion in the most important games and was a factor, that type of guy. And, again, it's a good class. Fitzgerald, what a tremendous wide receiver he was. He came out of Pittsburgh, kind of took things on storm. He was kind of, for me, the true transition from, that 5'10", 6-foot guy to the more tall, lengthy guy that we are accustomed to seeing now run out on the outside, those guys that are 6'3", 6'4", and above. He was kind of, to me, that first guy that kind of helped transition to the bigger, lankier wide receiver. I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's kind of how I view his, segue into the NFL out of Pitt.
Any era receiver is what I would call him. Like he could have played in any, because he was big and physical. So, I mean, in the 80s and 90s, when corners were allowed to have their hands on you a little bit, he still would have been fine. Should have won the Heisman Trophy when he was at Pitt. He was the best player in college football. We did all those all-decade teams this week at Sporting News. He was one of those, we did all-decade teams from the 70s through the present day, 7 different teams as part of our 140 celebration. He was one that for his decade we did. It was, I like the ones where you're like, Larry Fitzgerald, he's in, no discussion. He was one of those guys. So And an all-time good guy. Like I said, I had a chance to cover a couple of his NFL games, and just unbelievably consistent performer over the years. So he's breezing him probably the highlights of this class, but it is like I said, a very fun class with all deserving guys. And when they have that ceremony up there in Canton on Saturday, for me, I don't know about you, but it's all right, it's football season now. I mean, everything else, it's like, it's okay. I'll watch the preseason, get really deep into college here over the next few weeks, but it'll be amazing.
Yeah, sometimes on the speeches they get a little long, but they're always interesting to watch and how each one has impacted their career and that decision that they got into the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees, you brought up another great one. Here's a guy that goes to Purdue. He is scrawny as scrawny can be. I mean, that's back when I was coaching in ball. And as a matter of fact, I got to see him in his first or second year. His first year, they used to take pictures at Purdue of a kid that came in, and then you take a picture of him when he left to see how, what his transition was like over the 4 years. When he came in, I mean, he had hardly any body mass at all, and he never really did. But boy, could that kid spin the football. I mean, he could spin a football. And, he was one of those guys that you always were going to doubt, right? That he was going to be good enough or tall enough, how would he adjust to the pro game. He came in with the basketball on grass mentality with Joe Tiller, where they threw it all around the yard. And how does that translate into the NFL? Well, pretty darn good. It got him a Super Bowl wing, 13 Pro Bowl appearances. This is 5 All-Pros appearances. And, for the better part of argument, he is the, I guess, all-time big number one QB for the New Orleans Saints in a lot of people's mind.
I really think you said it best there. He probably went through his entire career being doubted a little bit, but you never heard him talk about it. Like, he never used that. He just played football. And the best way I could describe Drew Brees is, whether you were a Big Ten fan of another school or a Green Bay fan like me in the NFL, he was so annoying to play against because he was so good, so clean, so accurate, didn't make mistakes. A couple of the games he played against the Packers are just, that was a clinic in how to play quarterback and how he got the ball out quickly, accurate, over 300 yards. Obviously paired well with Sean Payton and Joe Tiller in college, and then Sean Payton in the NFL. But his career really took off. And, when I think of Drew Brees, you forget about the Chargers chapter, which wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
And then you just remember Purdue being a Rose Bowl contender and going into Ohio Stadium and winning and beating Michigan when Michigan had Drew Henson. He was baller. And I think what you'll see Saturday is just how much he means to the city of New Orleans, delivering a largely terrible pro football franchise a Super Bowl. Like, they have had very lean years. And I'm not saying it's a terrible run franchise. I'm just saying over the years, they haven't had a lot of victories. So for Brees to go out and do that, it'll be fun to see. And I think we ended up putting him 6 on our list of the Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So, like, Brady's not there yet. When he'll be number 1 when he gets in, but you're looking at a guy that's in that same breath as Elway and Marino and Unitas, Montana, and Manning. I mean, he's right there. And Favre. I mean, that's a tough group to rank 1 through 7.
Yeah. And
hey, Bill, how are you, brother?
Hey, Jim, how you doing, man?
I'm alive and well, alive and kicking. Something I was thinking about is these preseason Heisman things. Everybody's got the same guys up at the top, which some of them I think were deserving, but some are not. Arch Manning has still not done a damn thing, and yet, oh my God, it's because his name is Arch Manning that he has to be up in this upper 1-2 position, and I just don't think that's an advantage going into the season. The season will play that out, but I just don't understand why you would have a preseason Heisman vote when some of these guys have played and done well, but there are guys that have played. Trinidad Chambliss has played much better than Arch Manning probably, but there's a big gap in who's rated who where.
Well, I think with Trinidad Chambliss, you're looking at that he's our preseason All-American quarterback. He's our preseason number one quarterback, and some of that's judging on what he did in the playoff last year. But mention those 7 national championship contenders in this segment, and okay, so which one of those 7 has the least questions about their quarterback this year? I would argue it's Ohio State and Georgia. They know exactly what they're getting with Julian Sayin at Ohio State. He'll probably be better in another year in that system. And then Gunnar Stockton at Georgia, who's now he's been there the whole time. He's a baller too. So, but the rest of them, you're talking about Arch. Okay, Arch, yeah, the ceiling's very high. CJ Carr, Notre Dame, ceiling's very high. He's probably one Notre Dame's not questioning what they have there either. He had a hell of a year last year. Then you get into Hoover and Mensa as transfers. That's the X factor, right? If Josh Hoover is what I think he's going to be, then Indiana will be right back in the national championship hunt. And as Kurt said at Big Ten Media Day, he's like, it was kind of a veiled shot. He said, we're not going to do what TCU did and have him throw 50 times. And we're going to run the football. We're going to play defense. We're going to put him in good positions. But a little bit of a shot at Sonny Dykes, I suppose, but not like it's just 2 different styles of play.
Coach?
Yeah. And I think, some of that too, it's kind of like those preseason polls. You just cringe when you see some of it because you really don't know what all will transpire in a year, in a season. And even Josh Hoover getting some notoriety in that. And I think a lot of that has to do because he's in Kurt Cignetti's offense and such. But again, it always amazes me the topics that we get into before the season starts. And they're always the ones that are highly debatable. And I'm sure you went through that with some of the teams that you were trying to put together with the list that you guys put out. It's an amazing list. So if you get a chance to get on the Sporting News, there's a lot of different top teams and such that you can get on there and look at if you're a crazy nut like me. But it was really good to kind of read those today, the last couple of days. So with the season upon us, is there a game that you think I'm going to be at that game? I just on the calendar right now, I'm going to be at that game.
Well, there's a couple that jump out. That week 2, Michigan, Oklahoma should be fun. Another good crossover SEC Big Ten game. Kyle Whittingham, big test for him, because the honeymoon ends in Ann Arbor when you start losing games. Every coach has figured that out. Indiana, Ohio State, that's a circle the date game because of how long it's been since Indiana beat Ohio State in the regular season. Not the Big Ten championship game, but a regular season win in Bloomington. I don't know if that's a goalpost come down game, but could be. You never know. Miami, Notre Dame, just thinking about that game and all the implications from last year with Miami making the playoff and Notre Dame not making the playoff. The memories of being a Catholic school kid and watching Catholics versus Convicts in '88 and year before or a couple years before when I forget the final score, Coach, but they put one on Jerry Faust. Miami did, and they were still scoring. I think they just scored another touchdown in that game. So just knowing the history between those two schools, that'll be a fun game to watch. And then, those are the ones that kind of stand out. And of course, for me, Ohio State, Michigan, I've been able to cover the last 10 of those, and the stakes never change, right? Like they still, it might mean less in the future, but that'll be a fun game as well. So there are plenty out there, Indiana, USC.
And there's also Ohio State at Texas to start the season.
That's another one. Just circle the date, man. That's another heavyweight fight. So I'm excited. I am as you start to look at some of those games. And, obviously I won't probably be at that one, but Ole Miss LSU you'll probably feel the hatred coming off the TV set when you watch that one.
My daughter's already graduated from Ole Miss, and she still can't wait for that game.
Right. Yeah. So they'll be ready to go, I'm sure. So, just a great set of good regular season games. And the Big Ten, I love that they have a main event. If you kind of look at the schedule, they'll have a main event pretty much every week that you can really dig into and get into this championship race.
Hey, how about the comment by the new Purdue AD yesterday? Just how dumb was that to say? It's just like it's so dumb because of how out of context it was because of how awkward it seemed to be. The delivery was just not, it was like reading off of the sheets. It was just, everything about it was just awkward. And then on top of it, it is of absurd stupidity. You could have said 1,000 different things. We're going to beat Indiana. We're going to beat the Indianas, or whatever, and it would have been okay. Yeah, I expect that. But this was the most awkward, dumb, out of touch sounding quote I think I could have imagined hearing.
Well, in all these years of covering the Big Ten, you better back it up when you say something like that. There's two that have stood out that kind of aged better than any. And it was Jim Tressel speaking to Ohio State at the basketball game when he said, you're going to be proud of these kids. I don't know if you guys remember this one, but he said something to the effect of, you're going to be proud of them in the classroom, on the field, and in 300 whatever many days it was when they play in Ann Arbor. Well, Jim Tressel changed the trajectory of that entire rivalry. Kurt Signetti, when he was at the basketball game, and he said the things like, Michigan, Ohio State. And I'll be honest, as I've been honest with you, as somebody that's lived in Central Ohio, we were kind of like, yeah, sure thing, bud. Like, good luck with that, beating Ohio State and Michigan. And he goes out and does it. So he backed it up, right? And I always respect that's the lesson you teach your kids. If you're going to run your mouth, you better be able to back it up. I'm not sure Purdue's in a position to back it up. You're talking about a school that's struggling. I like Barry Odom. I do. But I think they're a little behind the 8 ball in football. They played some brutal schedules. And then the other thing would be, their basketball team's very good, but yet to win a national championship, right? So at least in the 64 team era. So yeah, I mean, they can go back and forth with Indiana. It's just the timing, Jim, is poor because Indiana's literally coming off a one-of-a-kind, generational, unique national championship run with one of the greatest Big Ten teams of all time.
Yeah, and you would expect that from a coach and some bravado maybe, but not the AD. So, but looks like we're out of time. And, man, I appreciate you so much. More importantly, Coach Griff, for, as always, guiding the ship today. Enjoy your weekend, my friend.
Hey, I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Bill, have a good one.
Coach, sorry to jump in there and hijack things.
Oh, no. Glad to see you.
Glad to be seen, man. Glad to be seen. But won't waste time. We'll anything that we missed, we'll get back to it on Monday. I hope everybody goes out and has a great weekend. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.